Good morning. Like he said, my name is Aidan Wallace. I don't serve here in any real capacity, so that makes you ask, what am I doing here? And the answer is, I don't know. One thing I do know, though, is I have a younger brother. He's 10 years younger than me, and I got to take him. We went on a vacation to Washington, D.C., got to see all the monuments, see all the cool things. Unfortunately, one of the worst parts of that trip was the Modern Art Museum. Here's just one painting. It's called Zips. It's by Barnett Newman. There's a line. And not just one, there's two. There's a third line, by the way. It doesn't capture, that's how deep it is. There's another painting, sculpture. It's called White Onyx Line. Home Depot. That's what my little brother said. There's one that I can't show, but it was a sculpture. It was a shipping crate. That's it. And then on the inside of the shipping crate, there was a video that was family-friendly for 15 seconds and then was no longer family-friendly after that. All I'm saying is if you have kids, don't go to that museum. I made that mistake for you. But the best part about that museum was my little brother. He's just a spitting image of me. It's uncanny. And he walks up to this painting and he says, "Hey, Aidan, look at this meaningless painting. Look at this meaningless art. It's all meaningless." I'm so proud of him. Now, the next day we went to an actual art museum, the Smithsonian Portrait Gallery. And my goodness, the paintings were beautiful. You saw religious iconography, stories of our founding, stories from like Russian painters that are just unbelievably beautiful. And probably my favorite was this one. It's a four-part painting. This is the fourth one. This is called The Voyage. Starts off at kind of the life of somebody, and they go down the river of life. First one is a young child guided out of a mysterious mountain into a beautiful plains by an angel. The young adolescent leaves the angel and chases a faint temple in the background in the second painting. In the third painting, it's a middle-aged man fighting storms while sailing down the choppy river, praying to a heaven that seems so far away. And then this is the old man, the final painting. And when I look at this painting, I see an old man as he's finished his life. There's nothing else. There's no lands to conquer. There's no islands to grab. There's nothing else but the light of God and an angel, and that's all he sees. That's all he wants. At the end of the day, no matter what we have, what life we have lived, all that matters is heaven. All that matters is God. Now, my little brother asked me a very interesting question on the walk back. He said, if you think about it, the beautiful art is also meaningless. It's just scribbles and colors and a pattern that says something we think means something but doesn't mean anything at all. Now, first of all, he's 10, just to remind you. I didn't think I was asking questions like that when I was 10. But second of all, he raises an interesting point. What is the meaning of art? In order for something to have meaning, it has to have a reason to be. It has to have a reason to exist. Otherwise, if it had no reason to exist, it would be meaningless. Certain people would say that the painting with 2 lines or 3 lines has meaning, but nobody thinks that way. Nobody looks at that painting and says, wow, a line. We all fundamentally recognize in the inmost portions of our soul that the old man pointing, I think it's called The Voyage. The Voyage is more beautiful than the 3 lines. Those who say otherwise, and I've heard people say otherwise, those who say otherwise have to actively force themselves into saying it. One of my favorite podcasters described art as our way of seeing the world the way God sees it. We have paintings to capture emotions and see a broader picture in an otherwise dull moment of our life. We have literature and stories so we can see the totality of all events in a very short time frame. I think of the Bible, the prophets of the Old Testament, when they're writing prophecies about Jesus. They don't know that Jesus is going to come as the form that he does. They don't know this. But yet they're still delivering the message so that we can see it. God saw that prophet do that. And God saw at the same time Jesus. We get to see that too. Even in music, we have music in which melodies and structures convey aspects of our soul. This is going to dumb down music theory, but we like complete chords better than non-complete chords and sounds, but we much prefer an incomplete chord followed by a complete chord over a complete chord followed by a complete chord. If that sounds like monkey business, I can show you later. But it shows us, it represents how we as humans triumph over evil. When there's something that's missing, we like it to be completed. It's an aspect of our world. That art captures that. That art captures aspects of our life. Now, inherent in art is meaning, because inherent in life is meaning. Everything we do has meaning. Yet on the surface, everything seems so pointless. We wake up, drink this black drink that makes us feel slightly better than before, get in a metal box to go to another place, do something really hard, annoying, stressful, put up with people that we don't like, to get these pieces of paper with these old dudes on it, with awful haircuts, so that we can survive for the next day. We do this 16,000 times over the course of our life until we are so old and weak that we can no longer do this, no longer do the thing we didn't want to do, so that we can stay inside, watch this box that shoots lights at us, while the government, with these people in these weird clothes that squeeze their necks and are uncomfortable, give us money until we can no longer see anything, and then it's a dirt nap, and then it's depressing. And if the sermon ended there, I would just go home, I would cry, I would do that. But some of us live that way, that very life, and are depressed. But some of us live that exact same life and are fulfilled. Why? What creates that difference? Meaning. They do all of this for a purpose. It's for meaning. And so, what is that meaning? What is the meaning in our everyday actions? What is the meaning of life? That is the question today. What is the meaning of life? Oh boy. Today we'll be reading from Ecclesiastes chapter 2. Ecclesiastes is attributed to King Solomon. King Solomon was the son of David, whom when God granted him one request, he asked for wisdom. He's the author of Proverbs, a book of wisdom. He's the author of Song of Solomon, a book of love. And Ecclesiastes, that's what we're going to read. Ecclesiastes, on the surface, seems to agree with the cynical point of view, that there is no meaning in life. However, even in chapter 2, we see a pattern emerge where to find this wisdom and ultimately in the meaning of life. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. I said to myself, "Come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good." But that also proved meaningless. Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to grow water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem as well, the delights of a man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all of this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing. I refused my heart no pleasure. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Now in this section, Solomon is describing pleasures, and not divine pleasures, but material pleasures. And if you take a close look at all of these desires, they are sins. They are ways of life that God does not want us to live. Ecclesiastes 2, laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? The word laughter in Hebrew is simcha. and it more accurately reflects roasting, bullying, mocking, just being mean. Ecclesiastes 2, verse 3. I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. Well, King Solomon is writing this. King Solomon also wrote Proverbs. And he writes, in that, it is not for kings, Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, not for rulers to crave beer, lest they drink and forget what has been decreed, and deprive all of the oppressed of their rights. So we see on one hand, Solomon is saying, kings, don't drink. The other hand, Solomon is saying, I'm a king, I drink. Not a good look. Ecclesiastes 2:4. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. He's undertaking these big projects for who? For God? No. For the service of others? No. For myself. For myself. Ecclesiastes 2:7. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. There's two sentences there. First sentence talks about slavery. Slavery is outright condemned in the book of Philemon. It doesn't say slavery is it's condemned in that book. I can explain after. And the second part of this verse and the first part of the next verse are about amassing wealth for his own sake. Kind of similar to planting vineyards for myself. As we go on, Ecclesiastes 2:8, I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem as well, the delights of a man's heart. The harem he's referring to is, King Solomon was famous for having 700 wives and concubines. And, as Pastor Terry once pointed out, supposedly wisest man ever, had 700 wives. That means he had 700 mothers-in-law. I don't know if he thought about that one. Where was I? But it's supposed to be one man, as we hear in the Gospels, one man and one woman, not one man and 1,000 women. Ecclesiastes 2:10. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. Reread those first four words. I denied myself nothing. And then what does Jesus tell us? Matthew 16:24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Everything that Solomon wanted, he got. Solomon denied himself nothing. Jesus tells us to deny ourselves everything but the cross. So everything Solomon has tried in this example to make himself feel better, to give him some purpose, was a sin. And what does Solomon receive in exchange for his sins? Ecclesiastes 2:11. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. So, to summarize this first third, Solomon pursues the way of life he wanted, the carnal desires in him, the sinful nature he had. And as a result, he falls short. It doesn't fill that void. It still comes up meaningless. Maybe that's you. Maybe you've been trying to fill a void in your heart with some pleasure, money, relationships, a good time, if you will, and you still come up short. These vices lead to meaninglessness. Well, if it's not material pleasures and vices that help us feel good, what will? What else can we try? Ecclesiastes 2:12-15. Then I turned my thoughts to consider wisdom and also madness and folly. What more can the king's successor do than what has already been done? I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. The wise have eyes in their heads while the fool walks in darkness. But I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Then I said to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain by being wise? I said to myself, this too is meaningless. For the wise, like the fool, will not be long remembered. The days have already come when both have been forgotten. Like the fool, the wise too must die. So in this section that we've just read, we see a frame shift. In the past section, we were talking about fulfilling an immediate desire, satisfying us. Now we see making the right decision. Now we see a more existential problem of what happens when we do the correct thing for our whole lives. And it still comes up short. No amount of earthly good decisions can save you from death. You can't marry the right spouse. You can't raise the right child. You can't buy the right house, make the right career, investment, all of that. You can't go to the right church. You can't read the right translation of the Bible. Nothing you do will ever stop you from dying. Solomon literally wrote the book on wisdom. We still study this book on wisdom. And he, the author of that book, is telling you wisdom does not save you. Ecclesiastes 2:16, for the wise, like the fool, will not be long remembered. The days have already come when both have been forgotten. Like the fool, the wise too must die. Even after death, it seems as if they meet the same fate. They're all forgotten. So what really is the difference? Even if we follow the commands of God, we still end up in the same place as a sinner who does not care. So, what else can we try? Well, Ecclesiastes 2:17 through 23. And we take a turn here, a little more depressing than we've already been. So I hated life because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish. Yet they will have control over all of the fruit of my toil, which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. So my heart began to despair over all of my toilsome labor under the sun. For a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. What do people get for all of the toil and anxious striving with which they labor under the sun? All their days, their work is grief and pain. Even their minds do not rest. This too is meaningless. So this is the culmination of everything that Solomon had done, everything that he had lived. Everything that Solomon did that was sinful destroyed him immediately. And everything that Solomon did that was wise was destroyed eventually. In this section in particular, he's talking about he's building a legacy effectively. He's referring to the concept of generational wealth, or having so much money that your kids and even grandkids can benefit from it. This is a personal goal of mine, but it has its flaws. Most of us never even achieve that. And for those who make such an accomplishment, around the world, people acknowledge it only lasts 3 generations. Even in the Bible, look at the story of King David, a man who undertook many great sacrifices, fought many great battles, built such a glorious kingdom to give to God, and then he has a son who once again rules in peace, makes some mistakes, but is still a very effective ruler. And then Solomon's son, Rehoboam, forgets all the sacrifices that David put, all of the battles that David had fought, everything that David had done. And as a result of his ignorance, the kingdom of Israel splits in 2. And just like that, David's entire life, everything he sacrificed, everything he's worked hard for, gone. Now, if the chapter ended there, we would have no sermon today. I would go home. I would, again, cry. Hopefully not. But good news is we have hope. The next part of this chapter gives us that. The answer is right there. Ecclesiastes 2:24 through 26. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too, I see, is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, chasing after the wind. Did you catch that? There's only one answer. There's only one way we find fulfillment from life, and it's God. I'm going to reread a portion. Without God, who can eat or find enjoyment? Everything that was meaningless in this chapter, up to this point, when we inject it with God, when we put God into it, suddenly flowers and has meaning. Instead of mockery, we build each other up and we see the lives of those around us change. Instead of indulging in wine for the pleasures of wine or drinking to feel drunk, we use it as an opportunity to commune, build relationships with each other. Houses and vineyards built for the service of other people show the love that God has given us when we give it to others. Sex, when ordered towards God, produces children who bear our image, name, and likeness when we die. True wisdom comes from the Lord. The future generations will be protected by God. Even if we don't see it, even if David didn't see it, even if David's grandson destroyed the kingdom, through his line we have Jesus. Only possible with God. Now, to have this fulfillment, there is a condition placed in verse 26. Ecclesiastes 2:26. To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. How do we please God? If we want to have this happiness, wisdom, and knowledge, how do we please God? Hebrews 11:6, and without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. All we need is faith. All we need is faith that God will take whatever we give him and use it for his kingdom. I'll give you a personal example. My job outside of this church, not like I work here, but my job on the surface, I'm an accountant. One of the most boring jobs ever. And in the surface, it seems meaningless. I fix company numbers so that they match arbitrary government systems. And the money is nice, but what do I need it for? I'm not married. I don't have kids who rely on me. If I had to describe my apartment in one word, it would be depressing. I see you laughing. What do I need it for? Why am I doing this? Well, without this line of service, there'd be no trust in the financial markets. It would be a free-for-all. You wouldn't be able to do retirements, pensions, 401ks without the line of work. And even if I don't see it, even if I'm a small part of it, I make sure that the money can go around the economy in a standard, trustworthy way. If I go out and if people like me go out, the economy implodes. I don't tell you that to make me sound cool. That's impossible. But it's to show you that we all have a place when we think about how we can serve others. And even about the money. The money can be used for investments that change the course of my children's lives, the people's lives around me. It can be used for education, experience, ways to grow yourself. It can even be used to help other people directly. Most I ever worked in a week was 60 hours over the course of 5 days at my old internship. That is averaging 12 hours per day. And it's not even. Some days I did 14 hours, or 7:30 to 9:30, taking no breaks, doing the most boring work imaginable. Someone I knew was needing financial assistance, and I was working to help them. And even doing the most arduous, boring work, so monotonous, I never felt more fulfilled than that week. It's because it was dedicated to God. All I needed was faith in God to guide my work, and the work became meaningful. To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. This might seem like a cop-out, There's many false preachers who say, believe for a Lamborghini, believe for a healing, believe for miracles, and it will happen. And sometimes it doesn't. So, what does that mean about our faith? Does that mean our faith is meaningless if we don't get what we want? Well, we have to understand what we have faith in. At Christ Church Ocala, we believe in something called the gospel. Translates over to good news. And if we were to describe it, it would be this. You are made in the image of God. Like good art reflects truth, you reflect God. Like good art has meaning, you have meaning from God. The love you show your children is the love God shows to us. The anger we feel at injustice is the anger we feel at injustice is a reflection of the righteousness of God and the ability to make independent decisions, otherwise known as free will, reflects God's will and ability to affect the universe He created. Unlike God, however, we failed. We've sinned, we've fallen short of the glory of God. Our image is supposed to reflect something perfect, and we don't. We make mistakes, we hurt people, no matter how big, no matter how little, we just don't get it. But there's good news. 2,026 years ago, a baby was born in Bethlehem. Now, this was no ordinary baby, but this was the incarnation of God Himself. This was Jesus, fully human, just as you are, but fully God, just as He is. He lives the perfect life we were designed to live as image bearers of God, yet suffers all of the punishments for our sins that we ought to have suffered. He dies on the cross, yet rises again on the third day and triumphs over evil, over our sin, over our mistakes. And because of that, we can be with God. Our sins are cleansed. There is nothing standing between you and God. If we put dirt on top of a painting, we can no longer see that painting. We need to wash it away. If we put sin on top of our image of God, we need the blood of Jesus to wash it away. And He gives that blood freely. If you have not surrendered your life to Jesus, to be washed by the blood, to be cleansed, and to reflect that image of perfection that you were supposed to reflect, we'll have men and women up front, happy to talk to you. I'm happy to talk to you. I'll probably be in the atrium over there. If you have surrendered your life to Jesus, your sins have already been washed by the blood, but so often it's easy to forget what He's done for us. King Solomon had everything. He was the most materially wealthy person to ever exist. Give you context, Elon Musk just hit $1 trillion net worth. Adjusted for inflation, King Solomon hit $3 trillion in net worth. Now, before COVID, it was $5. But he seemingly had infinite wisdom that lasted today. He had any pleasure, any respect, anything he wanted, and he described this life as meaningless, empty, because it lacked one thing. If we look at the purely human life of Jesus as an contrasting example, Jesus was born into a family of abject poverty. He had to flee persecution to a foreign nation, only to return to live his life in an insignificant town, in an insignificant region of a poor backwater of the Roman Empire. After some time, he gives up whatever little possessions he has to enter into public ministry. He serves faithfully. He serves perfectly. He does whatever the Father asks him to do. And yet, he's crucified for this. He dies the most painful and the most humiliating way possible. At the time of his death, he had no possessions, no public honor, no respect, nothing. And this is the life that we still study to this day. This is the life that God chose to live. This is the most meaningful life because all it had was God. The only thing here was God. All of our meaning in life comes from God. For without Him, who can eat or find enjoyment?